say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live on YouTube anyways. We still got to reach our support goals at Fringe FM to get the stream back up. So you radio folks, you're just going to have to come over to YouTube, aren't you, to catch this one until that hits. Call-in number for tonight's 501-777-5631. We have finished the entire book in 1928 of Sylvan Muldoon. God, man, I feel like such a moron. And I'm not playing either. That's probably one of the dumbest things I've done by a country mile right there. It's just I talked about Sylvan Muldoon for, I don't know, months at a time, and I was calling him Muldoon. Can you imagine that? I bet this guy was rolling around in his astral grave, probably. Who knows? Here's the thing. Tonight might be the last broadcast this week. I don't know. I'm hitting an Amtrak and heading to the, the Domec compound in Texas. So there's a possibility. I don't know this. I cannot promise it because I don't know. I feel like if I get together with the Domecs, the vibration might get so high. Who knows what's going to happen? I know I can't promise you a broadcast. I know that. Hell, we may get lost in the woods. We don't know what's going to happen. So what's up, everybody? Let's see who's here. I like to say hi to everybody. I know some of you lurkers are here too. Domec hit first. Susie. What's up, Susie? Dan. Will C. William Zobel. Grant gets out. Are you getting out, Grant? Dan Beard, my brother, Dutchy D. Let's see, Ari, Gypsy Jenny, Sudi, and all you lurkers, I guess. Vibrations running up my legs. Hey, listen, we got a lot of high vibe people here. It can get manic. I'm just saying, the vibrations can get, I don't know, So we got all the way through that book. You know how many books that you and I have went through? This is what I'm saying. Here, just hear me out. You're probably not going to like it. You ready? For the most part, you don't need, if you listen to this show, maybe one or two, but you don't need an astral travel instructor. Not really. Because we're taking the journey from the beginning to the end. We're going through all the books, everything that I'm allowed to that I don't get in trouble about. And believe me, I get in trouble sometimes on here. But I don't have any strikes. But there's only been 12 videos that have been taken down so far, counting 12. Those, I didn't take them down. But I think that there's a series of texts that I would like to share with you guys. And then once this is over, I'm going to start blending in guests before it's over, but I would like to share it with you guys because when we start bringing guests on to talk about this, you guys are going to have everything that you need as far as education is concerned. Now, methods of getting out of body and stuff, I think are going to vary from person to person, but, you know, like whatever. Now, someone brought this book up the other day. This one gets a little wild, man. But it's a good one. Some of you have already gotten into it, I think. Before I get into this, before I get into the out of body stuff and the astral, yes, I know the election's happening and people are voting and all that stuff is going on. But just remember what Monroe said. This is a fact. Toxicity. You know that word that gets used in the spiritual community all the time? Toxic. It's so toxic, that word. The only kind of toxic energy that happens is when two poles meet, one wants change and the other one doesn't. And if you think about that deeply, that's the only time shit gets low vibrational. You have two energies. One wants to change or wants change and the other one doesn't. Now, eventually the energy is going to go one way or the other. But while we're waiting, which is it's like the crossroads, it's the worst place to be. This is why like indecisive people feel like they're crazy all the time because the vibration's low. One way or the other. Until it goes one way or the other, until we get the change or we stay the same, things are going to get stupid. Now, I don't know how stupid they're going to get. All I'm going to say is, for the next few weeks, if I was you, just pay attention to what's going on. I don't know. I think I know where most of you are. Like, I'm in the woods. Domek's in the woods. We're good, right? But some of you may not be in the woods. Some of you may be in bigger cities or around people, melting pots. Just take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Understand that the vibration is going to get low. Because this is one of those times in life where these two energies are coming together and it's not just going to happen. The energy is not going to go one way immediately. It's going to stay there and it's going to get shitty. Now, that's just vibration. That's how it works. Now, if you studied hermetics, whatever, you know this, but think about everything that's happened in your life and in society. All of this shit, the bad stuff, the really chaotic things happen when an energy of change comes in and an energy of wanting to stay the same comes in and the energy goes nowhere. That indecisive thing or the moment we're waiting for the decision. In that place, in that crossroads is chaos. Not the good kind either. The stupid kind. This is the kind when you get into crowds and stuff and stuff gets stupid. So everybody chill. Let the energy do its thing. All you can do and all you can control is what you can do and control. And that's it. Most of you voted, right? If you did, you didn't. I don't care. This isn't a political show. But we do talk about energy and vibrations a lot. And I'm just saying, I'm not giving you an astrological whatever. This is an obvious energetic time of stupidness. So until the energy goes one way or the other, things might get stupid. So Hold on to your butts is all I'm saying. It's from Talladega Nights. Yeah, what are y'all talking about? Vibrations running up my legs. Yeah, vibrations running up my legs. Yeah. Ari the cat says, I'm ready for some change. All right. Well, the energy's it's gonna give one way or the other for sure. It's just how it works. All right. You guys ever heard of Albert Taylor? I know some of you have because you've asked me to talk about this text in this book. This guy has an incredible journey. I would say almost I wouldn't say as like active as Jason Quitt's journey, who we've had on the broadcast quite a few times. But Albert Taylor wrote a book called Soul Traveler, A Guide to Out-of-Body Experiences and the Wonders Beyond. And if you study OBE books, this one came out in the 90s. And if you study the best of OBE material, Albert Taylor's book comes up quite a bit. Now, I know some of you guys in Discord have put some newer stuff in there. I think Sudi and somebody else, I want to say it was Tamishi, that talked about a new book on an Audible that was like pretty good. And I got that book. I actually, on the train tomorrow, I'm taking this book that Gareth sent me, and I might listen to that audio book on the way. But this first part of the book he calls Airborne, and he says, I want to fly. Here's a quote that says, I want to fly more than anything else in the world. That's a quote by Richard Bach. Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Hey, I can't mess up the name Albert Taylor. I can't. I think, hey, will somebody figure this out for me? But I'm pretty sure Albert Taylor wasn't this guy on Art Bell? Didn't he get on the Art Bell show a couple times? I think. Right? I think he did. So, in February of 1993, he says, I visited my doctor in hopes of finding possible physical reasons for the paralysis I felt so often. This is how it starts for some people. A lot of people get this sleep paralysis and they start freaking out thinking something's wrong with them. He said, I sat there in the examination room. I rehearsed how I was going to phrase my questions. Things like, Doctor, have you ever had a patient who couldn't get up while sleeping? And the answer to this would likely be yes, all of them. You're not supposed to get up while you're asleep, right? Well, what about, Doctor, I lose control of my body at night? Sounds kind of like demonic possession. Or, hey, Doc, I have concerns about being paralyzed. That sounds like paranoia. Good afternoon, Doctor. I've been meaning to tell you about my paralysis, and that's a bit too casual. He says, so just then the doctor walked into the room, and he says, hello, Mr. Taylor. She said, it's a woman, Doctor. How are you? She proceeded to check me over during the exam. She asked so many questions, I hardly got a word in edgewise, and finally my chance came. Doctor, I said, have you ever awakened in the middle of the night feeling paralyzed? She looked at me and smiled. Don't worry about it. That happens to me sometimes. You'll be all right. But I'm not. And she goes on to say, well, you're in good health, Mr. Taylor. See you in 3 months. That's doctors. It's probably a bad idea to go to a doctor and say this stuff anyways. Soon afterward, I would have another of these bouts of paralysis. And the difference this time, though, was that I was curious about experiencing an out-of-body experience. If I tried in whatever way I was supposed to try, I would feel paralyzed, and that is supposed to lead to astral projection. In a diary that I started keeping, I recorded for the first time when it actually happened. So Albert Taylor's first out-of-body experience was March of 1993. He said this, at 10 o'clock, I went to bed a little afraid. I drifted off to sleep, not really knowing what I should do to achieve an out-of-body experience. I really wasn't sure if anything to do except sleep. But I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew, I was lying on the bed in that odd state of paralysis. And then, without warning, something grabbed my arm. Startled, that's a nasty feeling too. Startled, I fought my way out of the paralysis, partially sat up in bed and looked at the clock, and it was 3 a.m. Of course it was 3 a.m. It was a freaking witching hour, right? That certainly didn't accomplish anything except for the strange sensation of feeling my arm getting grabbed. The sensation might have been any one of hundreds over the years, but all during the next day I thought the matter over, determined that on my next try I was going to get somewhere. I just have to push through the paralysis and whatever grabbed me. So this is a couple of weeks later, March 5th, 1993. How old was I then? I think I was 11 years old. He says, I settled into my bed at 9:30. Kind of tired. I relaxed my body and surrounded myself with white light, as suggested in some of these astral projection books I'd been reading. I now refer to fearful preparation as training wheels, since a number of the tools and techniques I used in the beginning were meant to assist me, like the extra wheels on a child's bike. After a certain amount of practice, I didn't need them anymore. So I soon drifted off into a light sleep, and the next thing I knew, I was flying. Remember what Muldoon says, he might be dreaming this, though. The sensation was like past ones I'd had, but I was flying better and faster than I'd ever flown. And I thought to myself, man, I did it. Wow, I did it. But Dr. H had suggested I visit her if I ever left my body. And I made up my mind to do so. Really? Your doctor told you, like, come, if you ever get out of body, come to my house. It's not a thing I would say if I was a doctor, but whatever. So I changed directions and zipped off. On the way there, I experimented with speed and altitude. I thought, speed up, and I did. I thought, fly higher, and I did. Down below, I saw houses, trees, and neighborhood streets, and only they melted together into one continuous blur. Never had I traveled so fast. No car, train, or plane could match the speed. I slowed my velocity and became aware that I was being drawn down towards the roof of a house that was rapidly looming larger. Here we go, man. We're back into spying on people again in the astral realm. Into the house I went. And I entered a room through a wall and floated up to the foot of a bed. There you go. Just stand at the foot of her bed. That's not creepy at all. I thought that I was in a hospital room because a bright white figure, whom I thought to be a nurse, was standing next to the person in the bed. As I approached the foot of the bed, the white figure backed away. Dr. H was lying on the bed. She did not appear to be awake. And suddenly, without moving, I mentally heard her say, "Congratulations, Al. You did it." "I know," I replied. We were communicating with more than just words. Not only could I hear her voice, but I felt the mood in which she said it. I also noticed that she and her husband did not sleep in the same bed. Oh, see? You're prying, Al. I thought this would be something worth verifying when I saw her physically, because I still wasn't convinced that I was really there. I could be dreaming, but I experienced a quick visual shift, some rapid movement, and found myself back in bed. I sat up leaning on my elbows and thought, that was great. And I turned over on my side and fell asleep. When I awoke the next morning, I thought over what had happened. Was I dreaming? How could Dr. H see and hear me? I would later learn that we are mind, body, and soul, and the soul can communicate with other souls without the mind being aware of the exchange. The mind is the conscious part of us that interacts with the everyday material world. And for some reason, when the body falls asleep, the soul comes to the forefront of consciousness. Now, this isn't verified. You can tell he's kind of putting his beliefs in here, but that's okay. But in the waking world, the mind or personality self is the dominant state. And later I would find out that we are conscious and aware on many other non-physical levels as well. And it is possible for each of us to functionally connect these states of awareness. Now, some people are born with this type of ability, and we generally refer to them as psychic or insightful. Remember that Muldoon doesn't believe that. He thinks everybody can do this. Just some people tap into it sooner. And still others connect after the body falls asleep, like me. If a person were capable of being in constant connection with the soul at all levels, I believe the majority of our fears would have very little meaning at all. Later that week, my wife and I attended another metaphysics class. I wonder if Albert's telling his wife, he's like, hey, honey, by the way, when I get out of body, I go to Dr. H's house and I kind of hang out at the foot of her bed. And did you know that Dr. H and her husband sleep in separate rooms? Did you know that? I wonder what she would say to him. Right. Later that week, my wife and I attended another metaphysics class, and I could hardly wait to talk to Dr. H, but I held back until the break. Greeting her, I asked, so, Dr. H, did anything happen over the weekend? She said she remembered seeing me in a dream, but couldn't recall the details. Plus, she remembered my turning away from her as if I was leaving. I then began to describe her bedroom, asking if she and her husband slept in separate beds. Dr. H looked at me and smiled. Yes, that's correct. Okay. Ladies, would that not creep you out? I guess if they're talking about it, that's okay. Right? If they're talking about it, it's not a big deal. What's up, Jane? What's up, Deacon? Cosmic, what's up, brother? Sir Wolf. Beezy, what's up, Beezy? Beezy, bless. I guess if they're talking about it, it's okay. It's a little, that's a little touch and go for me. All right, so March 20th, 1993. That night, I decided not to attempt an out-of-body experience. I just attempted to surround myself with white light because I was too fearful. He doesn't really go into what he's afraid of, though, does he? That's the thing. Like, what are you afraid of? Nothing happened before I fell asleep, but later, I woke up in the middle of the night, vibrating. I crossed my arms, turned over on my side, and fell asleep. The vibrations, or vibes, I had felt numerous times, but I'd always thought that they were earth tremors. Living in California, I didn't pay much attention to the experiences at first, but in time, I realized that the vibrations were another part of the astral experience. I would later discover that the vibrations are a signal that my consciousness is transitioning to a higher level of reality, the astral plane. I guess the metaphysicians refer to it as the next level above the physical. And when I finally learned to control the vibrations, I was able to access planes of consciousness beyond the astral. It appears that my soul body vibrates or oscillates at a particular rate. The non-physical beings that inhabit these realms also appear to be at various vibrational states, and I wonder if the more an individual spirit evolves, the higher the soul consciousness vibrates. Well, we would all like to think that. That's what we all teach each other. And we don't really know it, to be fact at all. We just teach each other that, don't we? Also wonder, are angels and other saintly beings at extreme levels of vibrational consciousness? Now, 2 days later, I experienced the same vibrations, and this happened during a nap around 4 o'clock. I relaxed until I finally dropped off, then woke a short while later with my body vibrating. I looked for signs of an earthquake, but there was none. The sensation of vibrating was happening on a level beyond the physical. So I guess in 1993, Albert Taylor, the sucker was vibrating a lot, wasn't he? March 28th, 1993. I began to suspect that relaxation may be an important key to experiencing the vibrations. So I bought a tape to aid me in my experiments. That's what I'd have done. Let's record this shit. Let's put a video camera out. By the way, I've never told you guys this, but every night, not every night, but most nights, I'll either hit the recording on Adobe and I'll turn up the gain on my mic and mute the input. And sometimes I'll turn my camera towards the bed just to see. I got some type of morbid curiosity about what happens when I haven't heard anything other than I talk in my sleep sometimes, and I definitely haven't seen anything like orbs or anything like that. So, all right, March 28th, 1993. I began to suspect that relaxation may be an important key to experiencing the vibrations. It most definitely is. He's probably good at it, at relaxing. So I bought a tape to aid my experiments. The tape instructed me to visualize relaxing every muscle in my body, one at a time. I performed this exercise and drifted off into a light sleep. Shortly thereafter, I woke and noticed the tape was half over. About 20 minutes had passed. I took off the headphones and fell asleep. I awoke in what I'd always considered a lucid dream. I was walking on a sidewalk. I stopped suddenly because I was puzzled as to how I got there. I then thought, is this a dream? In the past, when I became lucid in my dreams, I would perform a simple test. I would attempt to fly over the ground, low. But now I focused my thoughts, leaned forward, and began flying slowly over the sidewalk. I stood up, looked around, and thought, I did it again. I continued to check out my surroundings, which were illuminated by a strange glow. It was neither dark nor daylight, more like an eerie dusk. In addition, the lightning did not appear to have a single source. I took off flying over the city, or a city. I had no idea where I was. And soon I was flying over a neighborhood. And below me was what looked like a swimming pool. And suddenly, an idea came to me. I decided to experiment. I flew right into the water. At first, I held my breath because I didn't want to be the first to drown astrally. At last, I decided to take in a breath, and I could feel cool water all around me. And the coolness came to me as I inhaled. I thought, this is incredible. I became aware that 2 or 3 figures were standing just beyond the edge of the pool, slightly beyond my vision, and I felt as if the figures were observing me like teachers monitoring a playground. Fearful of a possible encounter, I flew out of the water and into the sky. Wherever I was, I could see many rooftops close together. Suddenly, there was a loud crash, and I opened my physical eyes and sat up in bed and blurted out, Jesus! My wife stood at the end of the bed, smiling sheepishly. Sorry, she said. I dropped the flashlight. All right, so check this out. Here's the thing. The dancing gray, get out of here. Get out of here. Here's the thing. We don't know that he's having OBEs yet. We do know that he's having lucid dreams. And at the very least, he's dreaming that he's having out-of-body experiences. He's only verified a couple of things. He might have even projected his consciousness into that lady's house in a dream. But so far, Albert Taylor, what he's telling us, so far, he hasn't. He's always, what I'm saying is he's always fell asleep and then came to, right? So we don't know that he's had that etheric OBE yet. But I think that's coming, right? I think it's coming. All right, March 30th, 1993. Not for another week would I attempt another out-of-body experience. I lay flat on my back around midnight trying to relax and clear my mind. After what felt like an eternity, I began to feel a low-level tingling slowly increase to a full-blown vibration. I was a little surprised because this was the first time I had started the vibrations before. Here we go. Before falling asleep. So I really didn't know what to expect. Now, during the shaking, I felt several strong, jarring surges, and then fear set in. I crossed my arms, turned over on my left side, and fell asleep. April 11th, 1993. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke up and had difficulty going back to sleep, so I decided to attempt to reach the vibration state with the help of a relaxation tape. Halfway through, I stopped the tape and turned over, and soon I felt soon I felt myself begin vibrating. I turned over on my back and tried to increase the trembling. The vibe started to surge from deep within me like the foreshocks of an earthquake, with my head as the epicenter. I thought about floating upwards just like that. I felt the top of my head rubbing against the headboard of our bed. The headboard had begun to slide downward, and I could actually feel the vinyl surface moving past me. Or was I moving past it? And then suddenly, I could see. But my physical eyes were not open. I noticed an eerie, non-directional lightning radiating inside our bedroom. That's different. There was also an intermittent high-volume buzzing sound, and I thought to myself, Is this it? So I decided to get up physically, but I could not move an inch. I was paralyzed. This realization caught me completely off guard. This was the first time that I had experienced the paralysis without sleeping first and then waking up in it. Without warning, a humanoid shape appeared about 18 inches away from me. Startled, I mentally told it to get away, and it did not respond, though it did become increasingly transparent. So I panicked, and I began moaning, hoping that my wife would wake me up, which she did. And I noticed that the lighting in the room changed as I reconnected with my body. What the hell just happened there? Oh, thanks for the 10, Delina. Appreciate you. The 10, I think, is that a super chat? Thank you so much. So the first time this guy gets out of body without sleeping, he's already seeing like entities. Damn. And lightning. What's up, Matt? Thanks for joining. That's pretty trippy, man. So he started freaking out. He started moaning, and his wife woke him up. So after waking, I told my wife about the ghostly apparition. She said I hadn't moved physically, and when she nudged me awake, my head was approximately 9 inches from the headboard. I'd been about that far away from the headboard before I fell asleep, so he didn't move, is what he's saying. Thinking about it afterwards, I decided I hadn't exactly been afraid of the figure near me. I think that the buzzing sound and the lightning floating into the air, the paralysis, and finally, the figure, all of it just overwhelmed me. My wife described my head as being physically 9 inches away from the headboard, yet I had felt the uneven button tucking of the vinyl surface. So I guess, hold on. My wife had described my head as being physically 9 inches away from the headboard, yet I had felt the uneven button tucking of the vinyl surface. Did I astral project out of the top of my head? Oh, I know what he's saying. Because, some of those headboards got buttons on them, right? So he felt on his head the button on the headboard, but she told him, man, your head never moved. Interesting. I've read in various books that this is very common, though I'm not sure I would use the word common. I've also read in books on Hindu religion, such as the Paramahansa Yogananda's book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, that something called a crown chakra is at the top of the head. I wonder if this is what is he saying? I wonder if this may have something to do with my leaving the body that way. Whatever helps to create the exit for my soul appears to happen naturally. After numerous repeats of leaving through the top of the head, I have substituted the word natural for common. Isn't that crazy how we do that a lot of times? Like the moment we have a mystical or strange experience, we start trying to connect like books we've read or the soul's doing this. A lot of times, several people have talked to me about Dolores Cannon. Yeah, if you go back and you read books where people really aren't that spiritual, like they're not trying to connect religions or soul stuff or anything to it. For instance, like Muldoon, he said when you come out, like when your etheric comes out, it can slide out where your head is, it can go sideways, it can hit the floor, it can come up to the ceiling. But I just think it's kind of interesting how we I don't know if it's psychological or emotional, it doesn't really matter, but as soon as stuff like this starts happening to us, we automatically think, oh, this must be what this person wrote about, or it must be my soul, or it must be the chakra or something, April 24th, 1993. A week later, another astral sensation occurred. Though it was fleeting, I decided to use the relaxation tape again. And while I was lying there, feeling very relaxed, a brilliant light flashed across my eyelids. It was blue and was accompanied by a zipping or buzzing sound. Dude, I heard that last night in my head. I briefly wondered what to make of this and then fell asleep. My next full-blown experience took place the following week, and again I would not leave the bedroom, but my astral world was expanding all the same. I'm starting to believe this guy. I think he's telling the truth. So, last night I was falling asleep. I've been taking lots of naps because I know I got to catch this train at 3 a.m. or whatever. So, I heard like a radio station. You know how when someone turns the radio station, it kind of makes that really high-pitched squelch sound? I heard a squelch in my head last night, right as I was drifting into hypnagogia. You know? Don't worry, Matt. Those are coming. I'm just overwhelmed. There's no way that I'm going to be able to upload all of those episodes to LTV. I'm going to have to pick some and put them on the podcast and take it from there. You know what it is, bro? I hate editing. I seriously hate it. And I like to do radio styled shows. So when I edit, I have to edit out all the music, all the crap, make sure that it's a certain format, make sure that it's podcast friendly, and upload it. It's not an excuse. It's just I haven't pushed anything up to the the podcast lately. But we'll fix that. We'll get it going again. Also, hey, if you join the I'm gonna try to put one of these out before I leave. But if you join the Patreon, I do 3 podcasts. So this one, the Void Walkers podcast on the Patreon, and then I also do Fringe FM too. Was that a super chat? Another one? Oh, thanks, Beezy. You're the best. Appreciate you. Could definitely use the support. May 1st, 1993. I woke up feeling paralyzed, a little frightened. But I talked myself out of it. I tried a different way to leave this time. I remember reading Robert Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body, that an alternate way to leave the body was to roll out. I thought of rolling over, and I did. Then I realized I was looking down at my wife's face. Holy shit. I was floating about 12 inches or so directly above her, and I also sensed a presence in the room, but it seemed content to stay near the television. Hold on a second. Listen to what he's saying. Just for a second. He says he rolled out, and now he's 12 inches above his wife's face. So what does that mean? That means that during the vibratory state, or when he relaxed, his body floated up. Just like Muldoon says. I keep wanting to say Muldoon. Just like Muldoon says, it floated up. So when he rolled over, he was already out during that vibratory state. And that makes me think, like, where was my astral body when I sat up? Because I just pushed up with my elbows when I sat up and got out that first time. Maybe mine was just inches out of my body, like Muldoon says. And this is what I think everybody should do when you get to that vibratory state. And I know you'll edit for me, Beezy. Don't say that, because you have no idea what you're in for. I will take you up on that. I will. You just hit me up in the Telegram. Could definitely use the help. All right, so probably edit it better than I can anyways. What was I saying? Oh, so Jenny, and who else? Was it Jane or Jenny? I know Grant's been getting out. He's Muldoon for the Aeons. No, he's Muldoon. I don't want to mess up anybody's name. When you feel that vibration, in my opinion, let it peak. Let the vibrations peak. Whether it's vibrations or loud noises, whatever's shaking in your body during that paralysis. Don't try to get out right when you feel it. Let it peak. Let it get to a peak. And then once it peaks, once it starts to kind of subside, right at that moment, that's when I think you should try. At that point, your etheric double is going to be loose from your physical body. And after all this reading and studying and stuff, it doesn't really matter where it is. It could just be slightly out of coincidence with your physical body. It could be floating. It could, I guess, be down, whatever. Just wait for the vibrations to peak, and then, as soon as it starts to let off, that's when you make your move. Beezy's like, I'll do it, bro. All right, well, then we need to talk. Just vibrations for me right now. Is it still happening? How come you need to call in, Jenny? We need to talk. Like, for real. Because you're so freaking close, man. I bet your etheric double is already just kind of out of your body. And something's keeping you from, I don't know. If you guys are at the vibration level, keep doing what you're doing. Don't try to drastically change anything that you're doing, because there's something very small that you probably need to do. So just keep doing what you're doing. Because in my opinion, if you're at that vibratory state, your body is eventually, like, your subconscious is eventually going to push you out. Eventually, because it's going to be like, okay, they're doing this all the time. It's time to get out. You know? So where was I at? So I rolled out. I thought of rolling over. Then I realized I was looking down at my wife's face. Is this guy still alive? Can I talk to this guy? I was floating about 12 inches or so directly above her. But I also sensed a presence in the room, but it seemed content to stay near the television. I tried to stand up, feeling for the blanket with my astral feet, and that's when I noticed the blankets weren't solid, and my foot pushed through them with very little effort. Intrigued, I felt the vinyl surface of the waterbed mattress, and with the slightest pressure, I was able to push through the heated water underneath. The plywood support panel underneath the mattress resisted at first and then gave way to my foot. So he's pushed his foot through the blankets, through the waterbed, down to the plywood at the bottom of the waterbed. Now he's playing with his astral body. This is really cool. Down through the plywood, I pushed to the carpet below. I couldn't believe it. I was standing in the middle of the bed, moving my astral feet across the carpet. I was looking around the room when the thought of venturing further crossed my mind. With that thought, however, I must have drifted into a non-lucid dream state, but all is blank after that. Yeah, that's crazy how fast that can happen. Because you're in your etheric double like that, you could slip right into a dream too. Or just go straight to sleep. So he goes on to say, it was a strange way to end an out-of-body experience. Normally, I remembered returning, but not this time. Could it be that my jaunts were being guided by some unseen force, which was allowing me to experience out-of-body experiences in small doses at a time? If you guys can see this parallel that keeps happening, so 3 or 4 of his OBE experiences, there's been apparitions there watching him at the pool, at that lady's house, at where his television is. I think we're getting somewhere with this. He goes on to say, I wonder if the majority of people have out-of-body experiences but lose consciousness or drift into the normal dream state and forget their experiences, as I must have done. It's exactly what happens. An important key to this question might be to remain consciously aware, lucid and present in the moment, in order to retain the memory of the out-of-body experience upon waking. But this appears to be easier said than done. This particular idea is what prompted me to develop the interrupted sleep technique. With this technique, my consciousness was capable of staying aware while my physical body drifted off to sleep. One of the strangest things I've experienced while performing the interrupted sleep technique is to hear someone snoring and find out that it's me. Some months later, I would have another variation on my explorations within the safety of my bedroom. This time, though, this would point the way toward further enlightenment that my astral body could be quite unlike my physical one. June 7th, 1994. I should have been journaling this stuff the whole time. I woke up in the paralysis state and, without my prodding, the lower half of my body began to float. I know he's telling the truth now. I'm stoked about this book already because this has happened to me. I've laid on my stomach and started vibrating, and then my feet, I told what was her name? Hypatia the other night. my feet would raise up, but my head would get stuck. And sometimes I had one experience where I sat up, but I was stuck at the waistline too. All right, so I woke up in the paralysis state, and without my prodding, the lower half of my body began to float, like the hinged lid of a music box. My astral body moved up, and my head rotated backward. The soles of my astral feet were pointing straight at the ceiling, and I was upside down and facing backwards, but my astral head was still connected to my physical head. Dude. Can you imagine that? Like, visualize that. Like, he's just floating up and he's being pulled completely upside down, but his head is like an anchor still there. I hung there upside down, staring at the headboard of our bed. I couldn't seem to break free, so I gave up and reconnected. Oh, dude, I can't read this, man. This is like making my... Dude, I'm getting goosebumps right now. You know what the next title of his chapter is called? It's called Buzzing Bees. And then he has a quote here. Who maketh the clouds his chariot? Who walketh upon the wings of the wind? Psalms 104, verses 3 through 4. Dr. H has been a tremendous resource of information and shared many techniques as well. In this early stage, she told me she taught another class that specifically focused on out-of-body experiences, and I suggested that I attend. She also invited me to join her at the International Association of Near-Death Studies, or IANDS, or INDS, which is a group meeting held in Santa Fe Springs, California. The class turned out to be a great help. I not only learned about historically documented cases, but met individuals eager to have experiences similar to mine. After the third and final out-of-body class, I told Dr. H how much I disliked the feeling of paralysis and asked if she had any pointers on controlling or tolerating it. Her advice was wonderfully simple. She said, when you feel paralyzed, just think of moving your little finger and you'll reconnect. With this added bit of information, I would be able to reconnect with my body with very little effort. There'd be no more panic and no more fighting my way out of it. Because of Dr. H, I stopped dreading the feeling of paralysis and actually looked forward to it. In July 1993, I attended my first IANDS group meeting. The first-hand accounts of its members' near-death experiences were fascinating. One woman, Rosanna, had 3 near-death experiences as the result of a liver disease. Another woman had a car accident that forced her and her son, a passenger, to have simultaneous near-death experiences. I was uneasy about sharing my out-of-body experiences. After all, these people had experienced death, while I was only performing exploratory missions. Yet as a result of the 3 near-death experiences, Rosanna continues to have conscious, controlled, out-of-body experiences, far more often than anyone else the members knew. I had to meet her. To make a long story short, Rosanna and I met, and I felt very comfortable with her and shared some of my jaunts. We became good friends, exchanging books, relaxation tapes, and conversation. I no longer considered myself some kind of wide-eyed weirdo, and whatever was happening to me, my life was expanding onto a new, exciting plane of existence. I was now ready to explore the astral plane and possibly beyond. You know what? This read is so much better, isn't it? It's like the further we go up in time when it comes to these books, the easier it is to read them. Like, people just start, I guess, typing books the way that we talk to each other, which is kind of nice. Thank God for that. Because Muldoon started to kind of freak me out a little bit with his wording of things. What time is it? September 26, 1993. Yet, oddly enough, nothing happened for the next 3 months. Then one night, I got up at 1:30 because I couldn't sleep. I stayed up until 4:30. Shortly after going back to bed, I started my own pre-flight routine that I've developed since my experiences began. The out-of-body experience began. I felt my legs floating upwards. And marveling at this, I proceeded to move my legs downward and right through the mattress. I kept doing this for a minute or so, up and down, and my astral legs didn't feel like my physical legs. They felt rubbery or elastic. I could extend them or wrap them around each other, almost like a pretzel. That's weird. I could also change their size and shape at will. And then something happened that would permanently alter my out-of-body experiences. The softest, kindest female voice that I've ever heard spoke into my ear. Al. I panicked, though. Someone or something was gently holding my arms. Though the grip was more protective than restraining, I initiated the abort sequence, moaning to be woken up. My wife was right on time, and I reconnected and sat up. Not only had I seen, felt, and heard an apparition, it decided to communicate this time. I guess if it hadn't been aware of my fear of spirits before, it was now. How patient my guides were during my earlier explorations. If only I'd known that something wonderful and totally beyond my imagination was trying to open up a dialogue. But as I stated before, fear became a prison of my own creation. Yeah, fear will do that. Just like, what's that movie? Dune, where his mother tells that the boy fears the mind killer. They also say it, and I've said this before, in the Golden Dawn's neophyte initiation. Fear is the forerunner of failure. It is also the fetter that binds. So as before, fear became a prison of my own creation. I believe the majority of my fearful reactions stem from having grown up conditioned by controlling religious beliefs. My Catholic upbringing primarily taught fear rather than love and faith. And I always thought that something non-physical and intelligent had to be evil. Boy, was I wrong. The next day, I told a friend at work whom I trust about the strange occurrences, and she said I should visit the Eckankar, what is that? Eckankar Society? Eckankar. Eckankar Society. I never heard of it. Given the fact that I am a native of Southern California, I've since wondered why I hadn't. But the main office of the society was located right in Anaheim, California. You guys heard of this thing? (847) area code. You're on the air. Who's speaking with? 847.
Adam Reyes. Oh my goodness.
Oh Jesus. You guys are not you're not in with the program right now. I know you're not. Pound Town. These guys party on weeknights, man. If you got something to call in about the out-of-body experience or yours, call into. That's Vardanker, Joe. No, here, I'll drop it in the chat how it's spelled. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a typo. But this is how it's spelled in the book here. I'm going to copy and paste this in the chat. What's up, Jen? Somebody look that up for me. That's how it's spelled in the book. All right. I never heard of it. And it's located in Anaheim, California. That very day, I drove over there. Walking in the front door, I interrupted a group of people sitting in a circle in the middle of the room. A middle-aged woman smiled at me, motioning for me to take a seat. After I did, they all closed their eyes and began to sing the strangest song. I joined in softly, trying not to stand out. And after they completed what I now know to be the hue, they began to discuss dreams and how they were influenced by spiritual masters. And after a while, I raised my hand. Yes, the woman asked me with curiosity. I answered, I've never been here before, and I was wondering, what's this all about? And she said, you fit in so well. We all thought you were an ekist. He even hewed with us, another person remarked. I was then treated as if I were a long-lost relative. Sounds like you're, you know what my mind would be thinking? Because they're using phrases like, oh, he hewed with us, ekist, and all these other languages I've never heard. And then they start treating you like you're their best friend. I would start wondering real quick, like, am I getting involved with a cult here? You know? Did just immediately hang up? Hell yeah, I immediately hung up. My show, damn it. Hang up if I want to. You know, I remember when the cool thing about phone calls too is like, I remember calling into the Art Bell show, and I could probably find the episodes where I called in. One time, Art Bell was so good with phones, like if you weren't getting to the point, he would just hang up on you. I can't do that. Most of the time, I can't do that because it's just mean, you know. But every now and then, if it's a smart thing to do, I'll do it. But one time I called in and I was telling him this story about an OB experience I had. And instead of hanging up on me, you know how he would be like, yeah, yep, because he's trying to get you to get to the point, right? I think my ADD went off track, right? And I started saying stuff and I never heard him do it, but he muted me. And then he just started talking. And I told him like a 10 to 15 minute story. And I think this is when he did right when he started doing Midnight in the Desert. So I told him like a 10 or 15 minute story, and no one ever heard but the first sentence that I said when I listened to it again. That sucker left me on hold, sitting there talking the whole time. It was pretty cool. And then there's another episode I want to find and play you guys where he pretended to eat a light bulb. Do you guys remember that? When Art Bell, he's like, I'm going to chew on this light bulb. He was never on camera, really, so he would do these pranks. And it sounded like he was eating a light bulb, but he was eating a potato chip. That next caller that called in after that was me. God, that was my favorite late night show, man. I loved that show. I miss it so much. Yes, it's one of those nostalgic things that I miss for sure. I love Art Bell. Missed the guy tremendously, you know. Oh, shit. All right. It's 10 o'clock, so we got to do the thing. I got to do my thing, really. We're not even on Fringe FM, but should be short. I'll be right back.
You are listening to Joe Root and Lighting the Void here on the Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Malorcas45, fan of the Fridge FM, challenging everyone to open their mind's eye. Listen to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop to gain precision for your third eye vision.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
You. Hopefully everybody took advantage of that and the small pee break. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, live on, YouTube now. Soon, Fringe FM, once we hit that, like if you guys want to support the Fringe FM and get the radio stream back up, I know the radio listeners are missing it. Just go to fringe.fm. There's a value for value page there, and there's tons of ways you can support. You can donate there, get that sucker back on. Also, check out the Fringe FM podcast, too. Who do we got? Looks like we got, I want to say, is this 304 area code? Hello. Did you hang up? Maybe they hung up. Call back if you want to call back into the show. Whoever that was from West Virginia. All right. So let's see what's. So you guys, I read a little bit in the chat. So you guys know about this stuff. You know, here's the thing too, though, like whatever you want to call it, I say keep communicating with spirit. Some use ceremony, some use magic, some use whatever you use. Just don't stop communicating with that thing. Like I personally use like ceremony and magic and things like that, but you don't have to do that. You can use prayer, call it whatever you want. I think it's a good idea, honestly, because you might get some help in the out of body experience when you need it. 304 area code. You're on the air. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, Joe, it's Beezy.
What's up, Beezy? It's good to hear your sweet voice.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you.
What do you got to say? What's on your mind?
I have had one question I wanted to ask you specifically.
Sure.
So I think I had like an out of body experience back in like 2015 or something like that.
Okay.
It feels like very, I don't know, like I'm not supposed to talk about it, but let's go.
Too late.
Too late. Yeah, we're talking about it. Yeah, it was in the middle of a dream, and in my dream, I looked out of my window and saw just so many people being like lifted up into beams of light. And then I looked around and saw all of the sources of light were beams, and I was lifted up into a beam. And in that moment, I felt like I was dying. I was sure I was dying, and I was fighting against dying. And then at some point, I accepted it, and I became one with all that is. And it was the most blissful, most peaceful. It was like a light that felt vibratory. It was very intense, but in the light, I was so peaceful, and I felt unified with all things. I felt no individuality, and I think that's the last time I've had like an out-of-body experience, would you consider that an out-of-body experience?
How long ago was it, you said?
I think 2015.
So was it profound enough that you remember the details, right?
Oh, yeah. It was the biggest event of my life.
What happened? Do you remember what happened before that? Were you asleep? Did you slip into sleep?
Yeah, I was having a pretty normal dream, but in my dream, I looked out the window and saw that everyone was being engulfed in these beams. And then I looked around at the light sources around me, and they were in beams. And all of a sudden, I was in a beam. And that's when this happened.
Do you remember waking up after?
Oh, yeah. I remember waking up after, and I was talking a million miles a minute, like, oh my God, yeah, I don't know, like, I felt like I was awakened finally, and,
Sure.
Yeah, I was very happy that I did not die like I originally thought, and I've always wanted your opinion on that, if that was like just a straight up out of body experience.
If you don't know, then the kind of out of body experience that I'm talking about, then it wasn't. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't something profound, right? So like we have dreams, lucid dreams, and then sometimes our consciousness will go places and do things without our etheric body going anywhere. And you know how sometimes when you think about stuff and you fall asleep and the next thing you know, you're dreaming about weird stuff that's got all the symbols you were thinking about, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think that happened. I think you had sometimes we get dreams that are actual messages from our unconscious or higher self, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes we get those, you know.
I'm not sure if I explained it accurately. When I was there, I was beyond identification. I was beyond time. I was just in the moment, being, and it was just the most blissful, most peaceful, ecstatic possible thing ever.
And no Molly before bed, right?
No drugs
I'm just
whatsoever.
playing with you. So
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't mean that it wasn't a profound spiritual experience. I think we all get at least one of those in our life, right? You could have went somewhere beyond an etheric out-of-body projection. You could have just went straight into something that you already knew, that was already a part of you, that just wanted to show you something, right? Yeah. But like if I'm talking about, what I'm talking about is like the etheric OBE. I mean, when I say no, that it's not the same thing, don't think for a minute that your experience wasn't a valid spiritual experience. You could have went way the hell up there, right? It could have been an awakening for you. Did your life seem to change afterwards, or did your way of thinking change after that?
Yeah, that's the single most important thing in my life that's ever happened.
See, I wouldn't call that an etheric out-of-body projection. I'd call it something awesome, something more than that I have no idea how to explain to you what that is. Yeah. Sometimes I think our higher self does things, and a lot of times it does things to show us through synchronicities, manifestations, dreams, OBEs. And sometimes people have other experiences that there's just no explanation for.
Yeah. I've always been curious about other people's interpretations of what that might be. But I do think it does sound different than the etheric double type thing that I've heard about.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, I had a dream that was similar, but I think it was a dream, but I was younger and I was really into Christianity. So I was going to Assembly of God churches all the time, right? You know, those are the ones where everybody gets really loud and hoops and hollers and all this stuff. And I was really like, I think it was 14, 15, really into spirituality. And I had a dream that I was in a bus that got flooded and we all had to get off the bus and we were all going to drown, right? Like we were going to die. And I asked God in that dream, I said, take us now, deliver us from this suffering. And I felt my body leave my physical body. And it felt extremely real in that dream. You know, it looked real. And the fear, like the water that was rushing in the bus and everything was real. I don't know what that was. Like, I don't know if that was a dream or me experiencing another timeline or that my mind is so powerful that it made it happen. But I would say, like, in your case, the way you know, like something that was a mystical experience is how your life was after that.
Yeah, it was a definitely night and day experience.
Yeah.
For me.
That's pretty cool. And nothing like that's ever happened to you again, right?
No, I haven't. Not like that, no.
Did you recognize anybody in the light beams or whatever?
I felt unified with all things simultaneously, and I felt that time was simultaneous.
Listen, it was profound enough that it was in 2015. You remembered it. That's almost like 10 years ago. You still remember it.
Yeah.
It was something. I wouldn't discount it. And also, like, the etheric OBE thing, the reason why I'm fascinated with it so much is because I like to play around as a ghost. It allows me to, like, explore consciously. But I'm sure there are higher, you know, like, things that happen, right?
I want to do that sort of thing as well, more.
Stick with us, dear, and you will.
Yeah.
Have you got to the vibratory state yet?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
See?
I just have a fear barrier that I need to get past, basically.
Right. Well, tell you what, you help me edit these podcast shows and I'll personally mentor you out of your body. How about that?
You got it.
What is it called? What is that called? And throw mom off the train. You quid pro quo. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That kind of thing.
You got it.
Well, are you seriously like afraid though? When you get, how scared do you get? Do you try to wake yourself up immediately?
I really do get scared. Yeah, like I don't know. I'm a scaredy cat, kind of.
Yeah, we get you past that. We'll get you to that place where you're looking forward to it happening. You know.
Yeah.
I wonder if a part of your fear might have to do with the fact that you had that dream of being one with everything. Like, if I slip out, then I'm going to die, you know?
A big part of that dream was me battling death. Like, honestly, it was me like, I'm not ready, you know, like that kind of shit. And I don't know, I've always had some sort of like, ooh, I'm scared of fucking ghosts and cryptids. But I don't know, like,
you're scared of cryptids?
I think I was when I was a kid. But I have some fear I need to work past for sure.
Yeah, sure. Me too. We all do. Hey, don't think down upon yourself. Every person has like a fear barrier. Even the bravest people have another level of fear that they're trying to get past. So,
yeah, absolutely.
It's all good. Man, your numbers. Oh, are you calling from Brazil? Brazil?
I'm in America now, actually.
You are? Okay. I was thinking, what's this West Virginia? I did not think it was going to be you.
Yeah, I'm in West Virginia right now.
You get more America than that. Thanks for your call and stay in touch for sure.
I will, yeah.
And don't forget about that beautiful experience and how it changed your life. And thanks for sharing it with us.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks
for listening.
You're welcome. All right, bye-bye. There goes Beezy. What a beautiful experience you had, right? Man. Maybe that's like their higher self, like letting go of like the ego, you know? Are we really afraid of, I don't want to get sidetracked here, but like, are we really afraid of death, or are we just afraid of losing our identity? Like, oh no, there's never going to be any more me. No one's going to remember me. I'm just going to dissipate into the nothing. Well, I mean, that's probably going to happen anyways. So, anyways, let's listen to this guy's, Al's, great call, Beezy. So after they completed what I know now to be the hue, they began to discuss dreams and how they were influenced by spiritual masters. You know what? Maybe that's what was going on with Beezy. After a while, I raised my hand. And then I said, I've never been here before. I was wondering all about this. Okay. And then she says, hey, you fit in. Then they started treating him like a relative. I'd never before been greeted by strangers who openly and genuinely expressed such love. Damn, that's kind of sad, isn't it? Just to think like we go around the earth and no strangers give them love. You should come to the South. I told them about my experiences and that I was searching for some way to understand them. And one woman left the room, returning with a chart. And it depicted the various levels of consciousness, and she pointed to the etheric level. The sound associated with that level is buzzing bees. These people had a chart that listed the sound that I had heard. They then began to explain to me the meaning of the Ekankar. The Ekankar. The word means co-worker with God. And they believe that this is the ultimate destiny of the soul, that this purpose can be achieved only through the lessons learned from numerous reincarnations. One of the men directed me to their in-house library, informing me that I was welcome to take home any of their books or cassette tapes as long as I returned them. Over the next few months, I was to learn that the Ekankar Society practices a number of spiritual exercises to help a person accomplish a variety of things, including soul travel. Interestingly, they do not consider themselves to have a soul. They say that we are soul. They profess this with conviction. One book that I borrowed from their library was about a man who learned to soul travel, and after reading this book, I was inspired to develop the technique of going to bed early and setting an alarm to wake up at 1:30, and then get out of bed, stay up for a couple of hours, and do not eat or drink anything except water, then go back to bed. And I eventually called this the interrupted sleep technique, or IST for short. In that Ekankar book, the author described waking up in the middle of the night to assist in soul travel. I think Monroe talked about this too, though. This sounded like what I had experienced the night before, or was it just a coincidence? The author continued with instructions on chanting the hue, pronounced like the name Hugh. This was described as a love song to God, and the hue is chanted by taking a deep breath and slowly letting it out through parted lips, singing one continuous hue sound. A second book listed over 100 different spiritual exercises to aid a person in psychic achievements, clairvoyance, spiritual healing, past life regression, and of course, soul travel. Later that week, I attended the World Seminar at the Los Angeles Convention Center, and I'd never heard of this group, but to my surprise, there were over 2,000 people from all over the world, including Spain, England, Africa, and Germany, and all of them believed in the soul leaving the body. My primary reason for attending was to meet someone experiencing psychic occurrences similar to mine. To my disappointment, most of the people were merely hoping to achieve soul travel or to have their focus in other areas such as healing and predicting the future or exploring past lives. The interrupted sleep technique, however, would lead to a new blossoming of astral activity, and during a 10-day experiment between October 7th and October 17th in 1993, I would have 8 hits out of 10 tries. I had 3 out-of-body experiences in one night. 2 of them began unlike any of the previous ones. You know what's tripping me out? thinking about what Beezy just said. Like, she called in, like, right when we were at that part in the book, which is that's kind of a synchronicity to me. It really is. And another thing that I was thinking, do you remember me telling you the story about how I used to see stuff at the foot of my bed and that little witchy woman would come out and this bee thing was flying in my ear and buzzing? Like, I could feel the buzzing in my ear and the flapping of its wings or whatever. And I thought it was, some people told me, oh, it's a fairy or it's a whatever. Maybe that was just like that astral buzzing he's talking about. Could be. October 15th, 1993. I lay quietly until I became aware of a small scene forming between my eyes. As I stared at the image, it grew larger and larger until suddenly I was standing in it. Nearby was what looked like a neighborhood street corner. I looked around and realized, as before, that I had no idea where I was, and feeling brave, I asked to see my guide, as I had read about in various pieces of metaphysical literature, pointing at a spot 10 feet in front of me. I figured that was close enough for a first-time meeting. I repeated my request, but nothing happened. I thought of my body and wondered how easy it would be to return. And before I could even complete the thought, there was a quick visual shift and rapid movement, and I was slammed back into my body. I wanted to go back, though. So I lay still, and soon there was another picture, and what I've learned is my third eye. I experienced the same sequence of events. The picture grew larger and larger until I stood in it. When you scry, too, like through the Tattva cards, this same kind of thing happens. This time I leaned forward and flew up into the sky. I felt like Jonathan Livingston Seagull as I soared, appreciating an incredible view of green hillsides dotted with an occasional house or apartment building. Strangely, this prompted an urge to return, and I thought of my body, experienced a visual blur, and entered and reconnected with my body. In earlier flights, before I found out that I was really having an out-of-body experience, I didn't know that it was by pure thought alone that I flew. A fearful thought would occur to me that I might lose altitude or fall, and immediately I would plummet from the sky in a panic. Most of the time, I would pull back up and just in the nick of time to skip across the ground like a flat rock on a pond. I would then use my hands to push off the ground and climb skyward again, and other times I would fly at an extremely slow rate, a few feet above the ground. Sounds like a ghost, doesn't it? Unable to speed up or climb. All the while, unbeknownst to me, my thoughts alone were the reason for these difficulties. In addition, reconnecting with my body had become quite natural. Rather than feeling helpless, I would merely think of moving my little finger and presto. This decreased the time spent in paralysis significantly. However, I still found discomfort in the sensations that accompany feeling paralyzed. The difficulty in breathing and the fading physical awareness almost felt as if I were dying. Don't misunderstand me, it's not painful in any way, just very discomforting. The paralysis state, I believe, is like experiencing death in a small dose, sort of a mini-death. In a way, it's the halting of one's existence and the beginning of another. And it isn't what death really is. Or isn't that what death really is? ? In the beginning, the sensation of consciousness teetering on the edge of unconsciousness almost always triggered my flight or flee instinct. And once that happened, I often aborted my attempts at an out-of-body experience and returned to the waking world as fast as I could. More recently, I've received letters from readers who've shared that they often felt nauseous, which caused them to fly their way back to the waking state. I've never heard anybody tell me they got nauseous in this state before. Not saying they haven't, but that's kind of weird, huh? And still others have complained of a heavy, non-physical force pushing them down through the bed. This has been dubbed the heavies or the haints. That's what my pop calls them, is haints. And in my family, these strange sensations were attributed to witches riding us as a punishment for wrong deeds. Man, oh man. Beezy, you got me thinking. Did I miss a phone call? No. Okay. So if you guys have any of the experiences like this that he's talking about, please call in, let us know. Like, the more we can validate these parallels, the better. And the more we can get somewhere exploring this stuff consciously too. October 23rd, 1993. I went to bed about 10:30. At 2:30, I got up, used the bathroom, and went back to bed. I sang The Hue softly for a minute and relaxed. My mind wandered until a musical tone quickly brought me to full awareness. The tone was not from any instrument I've ever heard. It was indescribable. I felt motion, and I was floating upwards, and then I could see the entire room. I looked around to see if anyone or anything was in the room with me, but there was nothing. I was both relieved and disappointed at the same time. I thought about going up to the roof as I went up through the ceiling. I thought of my body lying there in the bed, and suddenly I was back in my body with a bad case of the vibes. I didn't want to stay there, so I turned my attention to floating upwards, and shortly I was on a collision course with the ceiling again. The thought of visiting my friend Kim came to me, and with that, I started to move towards the bedroom window. I was halfway through the glass when the thought of my body re-entered my mind. Within the blink of an eye, I was back in my body, fully reconnected, able to move. That's like the 5th time he's done that. It's like he trying to do this. Interesting. So you guys know, think about how fast this stuff is happening to him in the astral realm, right? As soon as he even thinks about being back in his body, no matter what he's doing, he just gets pulled right back to it. A lot of the stuff he thinks about, like I want to visit this person or that person, he does it in this etheric realm. Now, according to the occultists, just hear me out, the astral realm is the blueprint of manifestation. So here in the physical dense earth, according to these, the Hermetic Kabbalists, everything that comes into this earth first has a thought and an astral form, a thought form and an astral form. And then through natural law, through nature, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, synchronicity, it manifests. So if you go into the astral realm and you start thinking this stuff and it happens immediately, if those occultists are right, the ceremonial magicians and Hermetic Kabbalists, those people are right, then every single thing we think about maybe it doesn't, but it tries to manifest on this earth. Now, take that into consideration with how many people are on the earth now? 6 billion people? And we wonder why things are so chaotic here. I was looking up that too. I'll get ADD sidetracked, but I got to tell you this. I was looking up this whole thing okay, so in the 1800s, there were 2 billion people on the earth. And then in the 1930s, there was 4 billion, something like that. And then in the 1980s, 1990s, I think it got up to close to 5 or 6 billion. I think that's where we're at now, or even close to 8 billion. Every article I read is different, but it clearly shows the population increase from the 1800s till now by the billions. So think about all of those minds in this astral place, just all the crazy shit people are thinking about. Thank God that we have natural laws here on the earth to filter out what I think Monroe calls it M-band noise. Because it would be an insane place if that was true, wouldn't it? Especially with all the freaking paranoid, fearful people, too. So I'm surprised we haven't had a zombie apocalypse yet. I mean, Jibby Jabby was close, but Okay, what's the next one? All right, so he keeps thinking about going in and out of his body. Then he says, I was determined to get out again, so I attempted to disconnect once more. Hopefully he doesn't think about his body this time. The next thing I knew, I was driving my car. What? Perplexed by the sudden shift in location, I asked myself over and over again, is this a dream? I recalled Dr. H explaining that sometimes people create vehicles to move about in during an out-of-body experience. Never heard of that before. This is definitely a first for me. After re-examining the situation, I thought of leaving the car while it was still moving. Whoops, bad idea. I still wasn't 100% convinced I was having an out-of-body experience, so this might be really happening. And on the astral plane, things are self-generated that appear to be as real as in the physical realm. I changed my mind and pulled the car over to the curb. For an astral vehicle, the car was very responsive and easy to park, too. Without opening the door, I pushed through it and stood there next to the vehicle. And as I turned my attention from it, the car became increasingly transparent and finally it disappeared. I stood there astonished. I looked at my hands. They had an eerie glow around them. My entire astral body seemed to possess a soft, luminescent quality. I looked at my surroundings and observing a nearby street corner, I asked to meet my guide there. I then flew to the corner, but nothing appeared. I asked to meet the Mahanta, the Ekanar spiritual leader. I had been told by an Ekist that the Mahanta was capable of soul traveling at will. Members also told me if I wanted to see the Mahanta during soul travel, all I had to do was call him. Strike two. That didn't work. And it's a good thing. I was so apprehensive about meeting spirits. Otherwise, I would have been disappointed. A thought of my friend Kim surfaced again. And in response, I was drawn up to the second floor of a nearby apartment building. I entered a kitchen through one of the walls. Can you hear? I can hear some girls saying, "I got this guy friend, one of those guy friends who he gets out of body all the time, and for some reason he can't stop coming to my apartment." Now, this isn't Dan. This isn't the book from Gareth. This is just Albert Taylor book. Yeah. What's up, Donovan? Hey, it doesn't matter if you're late. You made it, man. 7.9 billion NPCs. Yeah. Such a scary place we live in. I'm scared. Just programs like the Truman Show. Anyways, let's hear about his deal with Kim. I thought of my friend Kim, and in response, I was drawn up to the second floor of a nearby apartment building. I entered a kitchen through one of the walls. I looked around for a minute or two, feeling like a cat burglar casing the joint. This made me uneasy. It should make you uneasy. And I decided to make my exit through a window in one of the back bedrooms. It didn't occur to me that the apartment I was in might have been Kim's, and for some reason that completely slipped to my mind. So you just thought you were in some random apartment, huh? I dove out the window, turned left, and flew up an alleyway. I decided to experiment with speed and altitude, and I noticed that I was able to exercise better control over these two elements. I thought of going back to my body and rapidly returned. And at first I thought I'd reconnect to my body, but I realized that I didn't. I was actually suspended halfway in and halfway out, looking around the room for what seemed like a couple of minutes before I reconnected. I then raised my head and looked at the clock. It was 5:37 a.m. I'd been traveling for over 3 hours. That's badass. If you were really out of body for 3 hours, that's pretty cool. That means you're getting good at it. I'd read that most dreams last only a few seconds or minutes, usually not hours. This was one of the first indications this was more than a dream. Later, I would find out two important things. The first is when I travel out of body on the physical plane, I seem to operate within the laws of time and space. But traveling at a higher vibratory level, there is no time. So by this I mean I've had experiences above the astral that seem like hours, but when I returned and reconnected with my body, Only a few minutes had passed. A week later, I thought about the apartment and how I arrived there by merely focusing my thoughts. I began to wonder if that was really Kim's apartment. I contacted her and described the apartment to her with as much detail as I could remember. And to my surprise, the apartment I described matched hers perfectly, even to a bedroom overlooking the alleyway. Later, she sent me a floor plan of her place, and at once I knew I'd been there. Not only was I rapidly becoming a believer in the out-of-body phenomenon, but I was becoming increasingly interested in interacting with spirits on this plane. Yet this was a back-and-forth process. On some nights, like the one 3 weeks later, they still unnerved me. Y'all don't be coming over here, man. Don't be coming over here with your astral bodies. I'll sick one of my astral servitors on you. Jesus. Apparently none of his girlfriends don't mind. They're like, yep, that's my apartment. I don't know what I was doing at the time, but, you know. November 10th, 1993. I was dreaming when I became lucid to the extent that I was immediately back in my body and very much aware of feeling paralyzed. I felt two hands pulling on my hips as if someone was trying to help me get out of body. I projected mentally, stop it. In that instance, I reconnected. All of this grabbing, touching, and pulling was a bit too much. There was still another entity trying to get me to come out and play. I could not help but wonder about its motives, and later I would find that its motives were far beyond what I could ever imagine. I think back to these earlier experiences, and I'm still amazed to think that entities, beings, or apparitions, angels, or whatever they're called, could actually touch me. But the thing that would amaze me even further is that I could touch them as well. I can't begin to describe what it is like to be hugged by an angelic spirit. It has brought me peace beyond anything I've ever known. November 1993. I went to bed, and using the interrupted sleep technique, I set the alarm for 2:30. I got up when the alarm went off, stayed up for a short while, then went back to bed. I started to sing the hue softly. I lay there for some time, but nothing happened. Frustrated, I turned over on my side and fell asleep. Suddenly, I snapped to full consciousness. I was now floating above my bed. I decided to fly straight up through the roof. Who needs a door? As the upper part of my astral form penetrated the ceiling, I could see wooden ceiling beams and electrical wiring, then 6 inches of fiberglass insulation. And when I pushed through the shingled roofing, I found myself looking at an early morning sky filled with tiny stars. Oh, that's pretty rad. I would love to do that. What's up, Tiger Lily? I found myself looking at an early morning sky filled with tiny stars. In awe, I floated there above the roof of my house. I decided to try something a little different this time. Hovering there in the cool morning air, I projected, I want to see the light. This light that everyone in metaphysical circles alluded to, as I understood it, has been described as an angel, Jesus, or even God. Maybe I got too cocky because I was abruptly gripped with an unexplainable fear. I felt panic setting in. I cried out for Rosanna, my friend from the IONS meetings. She had told me that two people having simultaneous out-of-body experiences could locate each other with very little difficulty. Suddenly, I was moving very rapidly and stopped just as abruptly. I found myself standing in an apartment that was unfamiliar to me. Man, this guy gets around to women's apartments, doesn't he? Then all at once, without any warning, a rare thing happened. I lost consciousness. I remembered nothing after that point. I woke up that morning still shaken from the unexplainable fear. What I asked myself later was, could the apartment have been Rosanna's? Did I get in over my head? Was I too high, too fast, too soon? In any case, I knew that I needed to develop more confidence before I attempted to see the light. After I made my request to see the light, I felt emotionally and spiritually naked. I felt as if that I am and have been suddenly came to the forefront. I felt I should have been coming from a position of humility rather than one of arrogance. And for some reason, I not only knew I was not ready to see the light, but at my present state of awareness, I wouldn't be able to handle it if I did. Dude. Good to see you too, Tiger Lily. Man, I don't like... I remember one time, that time I told you guys that I got frustrated trying to come out of body, and I said, I demand you to release me by life and light, and it sounded like I had a different voice. That's when those things like shoved me back in my body. I didn't get a fearful feeling, but I got the same kind of like feeling like, no, you're not, you're not supposed to do that. And it happened that fast. Like they just shoved me back in. I could feel them push like on my chest. Like, nope, you're not going to no light or life or anything. November 21st, 93. I sang Hugh softly. I soon slipped into the state of paralysis, accompanied by the now familiar buzzing sound. I felt the upper half of my body begin to float upward. My astral vision came online, although I was not quite ready to look directly at the humanoid shape standing on my right about 3 feet away. This time, instead of panicking, I concentrated on the thought that this could be my guide. I gathered all of the courage I had and said, "Hello?" I got no response. I repeated my greeting, still no answer. I was beginning to feel a little scared, having been given the cold shoulder. I gave up my attempts to communicate, re-entered and reconnected to the body. I watched the figure slowly disappear as I completed the reconnection with my body. Remember, too, that she had, not she, but he had a voice that said to him, Al, or did it say Al or Albert? Al, Albert? Yeah, I think Juan's mad at me since I blew up over there, since I had my little wuss fit over there on his channel, but I still love Juan. I'll be back over there gaming with him. I did check it out tonight. I think he was doing virtual reality tonight, didn't he? Juan's such a trip, man. He's a good guy. You guys need to follow the One-on-One podcast and check out his gamer channel too. Is it One-on-One Media? Yeah. Let's see. February 15th, 1994. A strange mingling of planes occurred this time. You know what? Before I get into this, the vibratory state doesn't scare me. Entities don't scare me that much. Not really. Not really. Like all this stuff that he's talking about doesn't freak me out. If you hadn't figured out, the one thing that does freak me out? And people can say, oh, use protection. Just use protection. Use protection. Well, all of these are like spiritual people that are talking to this guy. Unless they're telling each other that he can just freely go into their apartments, there should be like some astral privacy, don't you think? And another thing that I've been thinking, because my head's always wondered other stuff. Why hasn't anybody made like a reality show about this yet? I mean, we've got occult shows, magic shows. We've got the OA. We've got all these shows that talk about this stuff. Do you realize the kind of series that they could make about OBE people spying on each other? They could make all kinds of... I mean, this could be like at least 8 or 9 seasons of some kind of series. They should do this. Jane says, can you do the Rose Cross ritual for the astral? Well, the Rose Cross ritual is, the Rose Cross ritual is an invisibility ritual. I know that sounds woo, but here's the trippy thing about it. It works in both realms. If you've done enough ceremony, if you've done enough ritual, like if you've really done enough, let's say You worked your way through everything. You've done the LBRP for a year. Let's just say a year as an example. And you've done the other rituals like the hexagram ritual, the middle pillar, especially the middle pillar. And you've been doing this stuff for a while. So you've built up that temple. You've built up that energy really well. The more you do this, the more it's going to build up, right? That's why they do it. If you perform the Rose Cross ritual, two things are going to happen. You're going to become invisible in the astral realm. And I say that with the utmost confidence. You could go in the astral realm and nothing's going to mess with you, see you, hurt you. They're not even going to know you're there. Okay? But one-on-one sounds like a couple of gay Mexicans. No, it's Juan Ayala. He's been a buddy of mine for some time. That's what he calls his podcast, one-on-one. But what was I saying? Oh, so in the astral realm, you're going to be invisible. So it is a way to protect yourself in the astral realm. It's not so much like a barrier to keep things out. It's more like you're just not going to get noticed. But here's the weird thing that happens. And any like true like ceremonial magician that's been doing this stuff steady for a long time, that's done the work really, and most of them, I would say 8 out of 10 probably haven't. But the ones that have know this. Not only do you not get any attention in the astral realm, but like here on earth, people just act like you don't exist too. Because the astral is connected to the collective. If you could just walk down the street, and it's not like people, if you're the kind of person people don't notice you anyways, you might not see a difference. But if you're one of those kind of people that everywhere you go, people say hi and stuff like that, and you do the Rose Cross ritual, you get out of body, nothing's going to mess with you. Here on earth, people are going to act like you don't exist. Try. I mean, if you want to experiment with that, do it. But I would suggest before you just jump and do the Rose Cross ritual, to make it like as effective as it can be, work the energy up by doing ceremony for a while and then do the Rose Cross ritual. Yeah. That's a good way. Like, I think like I would do it right now. If I was truly worried about people spying on me, I would do it. Or if I felt like people were psychically attacking me in some kind of weird, obsessive way. And there's only 2 ways they can do that: through your fear or through your sexual energy. That's it. That's all they can do. Unless you're like paranoid. If you're already paranoid about attacks and things like that, then, you know, it's pretty easy for you to, you'll probably attack yourself more than anybody else will, honestly, just being honest with you. That's a whole other thing. I'm getting off track here. February 15th, 1994. A strange mingling of planes occurred this time. I dropped off to sleep with my legs intertwined with my wife's. I was jolted to full awareness by 2 sets of arms pulling on my astral arms. I also felt a great amount of pressure near my tailbone. That's got to be fucking weird. I mentally projected that I didn't like that feeling, and that pressure immediately decreased but did not cease. I then reached up to feel the arms and hands pulling me, but the arms were soft and feminine. I reconnected to my body and opened my eyes. My wife said that I had moaned aloud, so she shook me with her legs. Through this, I learned that it's possible to have an out-of-body experience even though a human is physically touching you. However, Dr. H said that touching makes it difficult to have an out-of-body experience. Because of an unknown fear, I feel more at ease attempting an out-of-body experience when my wife is near rather than when I'm alone. Oh, that's sweet. How come I can't get a girl or a wife like that? He's got a cool wife that's like, it's okay, baby, I'm here. She's all wrapping herself around him. I'm jealous of that. Is there safety in numbers on the astral plane? Sometimes I wish she could leave her body too. But since that's not the case, her physical presence is better than nothing at all. However, on the next rather brief excursion, I was on my own. Probably a good thing that he's got a wife too. That it's either she can't get out of body or is not interested in it, because you don't want to get one of those like mean girls, right? That's getting out of body with you all the time, and then you're like, "Oh dear, that freaked me out," and she's like, "Stop being a bitch and come on." Nobody wants that. No, let's see. Here we go. February 21st, 1994. My wife was on a business trip, so I went to bed alone. Attempting an out-of-body experience without my wife close by made me feel a little uneasy. Oh, man, that's so sweet. Yeah, I want that. I guess, in a lot of ways, I have grown astrally dependent on her. Yeah, you think? When the situation gets out of control, with her help, I punch out. What's more, not all of my out-of-body experiences have been planned. Some have just happened. And I wasn't sure if I was prepared for this possibility. I decided not to try any preparatory techniques. But I drifted into a light sleep, and shortly, I woke up feeling paralyzed. And since I was alone, I was very reluctant to get out. That's when I noticed that 3 to 4 humanoid figures were standing around me. Of course, when his wife leaves, they're all just waiting. Oh, she's gone now. Let's get them. They appeared to have hoods and robes, and I wasn't quite ready for this, as if I ever am. I fought my way back to the physical and reconnected. Who were these new apparitions? They resembled religious monks, but I wondered if I was simply dreaming, or was this an authentic visitation? And if so, what could they possibly want from me? In retrospect, the strange part about this visitation was that I was not the only one to see these hooded figures. So did someone else who at the time I had not met, but would soon become one of my dearest friends. Kimberly Clark Sharp, author of After the Light, wrote about the monk-like entities long before we'd ever met. However, a major difference between her encounter and mine was that the figures also spoke to her. She saw them after her near-death experience, and I saw them while partially out of body. Later, I would discover that, in fact, the non-physical entities I had seen were trying to communicate with me, but I was too preoccupied with suppressing my fear. This kept me from raising my own vibratory level to that of the hooded figures, almost like partially tuning into a television station where you can pick up the video but not the audio. This was also one of my first encounters with what I had later found out are guiding spirits. These spirits come and go, depending on the needs of the one being guided. In a way, they were preparing me for the role of a slightly different sort of guide, a psychic rescuer. Is he supposed to be, a psychic rescuer? You know, for a minute there, I thought he projected that, right? Like, man, maybe the fact that you'd been there with your wife, so your wife was a sense of grounding and a sense of safety for you, astrally. And now that she's gone, your fear actually projected these things into the room. That's what I thought at first. But now that he's talking about, like, he's kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen, I don't think that's the case. Maybe she was in the way. Chapter 3, Psychic Rescue. Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. Exodus 23, verse 20 through 21. Yeah, this one's long, man. I'll read this one, then this date, and then we'll call it. March 4th, 1990, or March 14th, 1994. I was dreaming that I was walking through my house when I became lucid within the dream. I was instantly back in my body, feeling paralyzed, except that in my third eye there was a picture. I focused on it, and it grew larger. Then I was in the picture. I leaned forward and took off into the sky. I flew around for a while, then returned to my body. The picture in the third eye reoccurred, and I flew again, but this time, while flying, I felt drawn to a large one-story building. I floated through the front doors into a huge dining hall. The room was filled with humanoid figures dressed in 19th century attire. I immediately thought of Gone with the Wind and smiled, because I never liked that movie. Milling through the crowded room were 3 entities serving food and drinks. Although the room was filled to capacity, I somehow sensed these 3 shapes as the only genuine apparitions. Feeling less threatened by one, a female entity, I cautiously approached her. She was dressed like the kitchen help from a southern plantation. The female looked at me, then quickly turned back to her duties. At first, I pretended to talk to the figures at nearby tables because I wasn't sure what was going on. Were these 3 figures entities or not? Why did I sense a difference between them and the rest of the figures? Why was I drawn here in the first place? And why did I feel the need to help them? I watched the female entity for a while, then asked, "What are you doing?" "Get back to work," she yelled, then moved away. I approached her again and said, "You don't have to cater to these people anymore. They're not real. If you don't get back to serving, you're going to get whooped." Oh, that's what she says to him? I wondered for a moment who was going to administer this, quote, whooping. But I looked over at the 2 male apparitions who glanced fearfully at me, then doubled their serving speed. I told the woman that I was leaving and that they were all welcome to come with me. "We can't do that because they'll come after us," blurted one of the males. What the hell is going on here? I turned to the seemingly crowded room and announced, "I'm leaving, and no one here is going to stop me." Where did all this courage that I have suddenly come from? Anyways, the crowd of imitation people showed as much interest as a room full of mannequins. I walked to the front doors, went outside, and was immediately followed by all 3 of the entities I'd been talking to. "What are we going to do now?" inquired the female. "It's simple," I said. "I will teach you how to fly." The 4 of us then headed down the street. One of the males kept looking back over his shoulder as if he expected an angry mob to burst suddenly from the building. Trying to ease his concerns, I turned to him and smiled. He seemed to sense my confidence and relaxed a bit. I instructed all of them to join hands, lean forward, and push off. We all flew, and I kept low at first, and then we began to climb rapidly. I glanced back and forth, checking on my students. Suddenly, without warning, they disappeared, and after this encounter, I was filled with questions. Where did they go? And where did they disappear to? Why didn't I fear them as I usually did? How long had these 3 been stuck in this pseudo-reality? I remember Dr. H explaining that when people die, they sometimes become prisoners in their own self-created belief systems. Where have we heard that before, right? Preston Dennett, Robert Monroe, William Buellman. For example, an individual may pass on and not know it, or refuse to accept his own death. Then he may continue to haunt an old stomping ground, castle, hotel, whatever. It would later be explained by someone very close to me that not only should I have helped, but I was obligated to do so. Quote, "As you have been assisted, so shall you assist." End quote. I was told that it was part of a universal law that not only is practiced on the other side, but was intended to be practiced on this side as well. I became curious about the origin of the expression, "the witches are riding you," used by my grandmother's generation to describe this paralysis. My aunt informed me she had a book that described witches traveling out of body. She told me that while she was reading the book, she became so scared, she tossed the book up into the top of her closet and tried to forget it. The book remained there, unopened for years. To make a long story short, I got my hands on this mystical manuscript, and here's the name of it. It's called The Magic of Witchcraft. The book describes how witches were linked with the dead and astral travel and how they communicated with spirits while out of body. The book also explains how witches lingered around graveyards to assist the newly departed dead to adapt to the spirit realm. It appears that witches have long taken on the responsibility of rescuing lost souls. Was this what I had done? Could I be considered a witch? I began to wonder if this is how the paralysis became associated with riding witches. Was it merely a coincidence that witches also practice astral travel? 300 years ago, would I have been accused of practicing witchcraft? The answer to that question is yes, sir. You definitely would have. Were early astral travelers burned at the stake in Salem for speaking of their out-of-body explorations? An interesting connection is that this theory of psychic rescue is described in the book Seth Speaks by Jane Roberts and in Robert Monroe's last book, Ultimate Journey. This then explains the compelling urge I had to help the Southern Plantation entities. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing as part of my out-of-body travels? Am I destined to help lost and confused souls? I began to wonder if this could now explain my fear of ghosts and spirits. Have they been trying to contact me unbeknownst to my everyday self? That's it. We're 5 minutes over. I like this book. You know, it's not as complicated and I guess scientifically rhetoricized, if that's even a word, probably not, that Muldoon, or how Muldoon is, but what's up, Sylvain? What's up, brother? It sounds like he's kind of going through the same stuff that a lot of these other travelers have. Anyways, guys, check out Fringe FM podcast. I told you guys about that. If you, the people that have, let's see, who's supported tonight on YouTube. Beezy, God bless you. Delina, God bless you. But remember the station, not the station. Fringe FM always needs your help. Right now, we're good. The only thing we need your help with is to get the live stream back up. Everything else is good. That new podcast episode should be coming out soon. I will be going to Texas tomorrow. So if the station stream is up, I could easily broadcast live with the push of a button from my phone, and it wouldn't take up much data. But I might. I don't know, because like I told you, man, I'm going to the Domec compound. I'm going to be in Texas tomorrow at the Domec compound. Don't know what's going to happen, right? So I might broadcast live on YouTube there. I don't know. It just depends on how deep we're partying. Either way, I love all of you. Gotta get out of here. I gotta get ready. Just got a few hours to catch that train. Night night, y'all. Sweet dreams. If you get out of body, have fun with it. And if you do, hit us up and tell us about it. Hit us up in the Discord too. Sweet dreams.
Tombstones climbing up the sky to claim the boredom and the whine of the radiator, to freeze the fates that intertwine, unresolved and undefined in this echo chamber. You've given up the ghost. Just like Lazarus, you know there's an operator, some strange passenger inside. To that strange power I'm resigned like an iron anchor. I'm just a ghost in your stereo, the fading memory of a shipwreck in the undertow. You're just a lost song I wrote, and I'm just a ghost in your stereo.